All aboard!
Stretch out. I mean,
Next stop, Chicago Junction.
Yes, it's Chicago Junction, being the radio program that is everything that's all about railroading. Now here's our boss, the head of the Windy City Hometown Radio Network, as well as being the chief electrical engineer, Mr. John DeVita.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Chicago Junction from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Tuesday, February the 17th, the year 2015. Today, the panel will be talking about railroads and model railroads. And now to start today's broadcast, here is our announcer, Mr. Brian.
Thank you, John. As he says, we'll be talking about everything that is railroading, both in the prototype and model form. And now here's our host to keep things going, Mr. Jack Red Ryan.
thank you, Brian. Brian Valou, sir. It's good to see everyone today who's here. We're a little bit late. Dave DeRushka couldn't make it. He has a transportation problem. Tom McKenna is on assignment in the field. And we thought we'd also have a guest. We don't have. So that leaves us, gang. We may get a call in. It's possible still. So I know we have a lot to talk about anyway. So I feel I have to apologize to our panel for having let them down. We had two potential people to talk to, and in both cases we're unable to make the deal go. One was on the A. Philip Randolph Museum in Pullman, and I've sent several emails and phone calls, got no response there. And the other, also, Pullman, by the way, the Pullman Foundation, which is in the news right away today and recently. And
I'll have more on that later.
Okay, we'll have more on that later. Who are you calling a moron?
No, you're talking about what President Obama's coming into town for.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it'll be part of the National Monuments or National
It's
Parks.
National Park Service.
Yeah, the official dedication for National Historic Landmark.
Okay, let's go with that. What do you got to say?
Okay. Well, the
Kevin?
president is due in town. I believe it will be the 19th to make the official declaration for the Pullman Historic National Park. The ceremony will be at the clock tower, from what I was told by a member of the Historic Pullman Association. And I'm sure there'll be more on that later, but the Pullman Historic Foundation has been working for a long, long time to get that site recognized. About all that's left of the old Pullman works is the clock tower, the remaining structure that wasn't destroyed in the fire, and believe it or not, a firehouse on 109th Street east of Cottage Grove.
We have all the structures that the workers lived in. So.
The townhouses south of 111th Street, all the townhouses are left, but those would have been the foreman and the higher ranking managers, yes.
No, it was even actually some of the laborers. Their places are being used to the south there. You get to see them all on the Pullman tour, and they're rebuilding. They're slowly rebuilding the shopping area.
Yeah, that's a project that'll take a while to redo, because when that was built originally, it didn't have the foundations underneath it that it would require now to be rebuilt. So they're in the process of getting all the design work done to put a new foundation under the building.
Before we go any further, for the benefit of you young folks who don't realize what Pullman is and Pullman was and who Pullman was, George Pullman, correct?
Yes.
Who wants to start that one off?
George Mortimer. Thank
Brian.
you. Yeah, George Mortimer Pullman came up with the idea of a luxurious way to travel. Besides himself, there was another company, Wagonlitz, which made luxurious carriages. And
What kind of carriage? I'm sorry.
railway carriages.
Oh, okay.
Well, see, that's the term. Wagonlitz carriages is from Europe.
Okay.
And they were the originator, and Pullman actually pulled his ideas from them. And he was from the Midwest. And so he set about rebuilding. The first cars that he actually made were rebuilt cars, and they were known as immigrant cars. They became later known as, with the expansion of the West, they have special carriages for all the immigrants on the different railroads, whether it be the Great Northern, the Burlington, Union Pacific, Chicago Northwestern, and such.
You're speaking of legal immigration.
Yes.
And of course, you're also an immigrant if you go from the east to the west, correct? Isn't that immigrating? No, not internationally, but forget it. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
How am I going to learn anything, Daddy, if you
Yeah.
don't ask any questions?
But so what he did, part of his idea with his factory, Chicago was not as expanded out as it is now. And so what they did, where he set up in the South at 110th, 111th Street, and started building his factory, he wanted all his workers around him and not coming in on the trains. So he built a community there. Basically, he was the father of Specialized Village.
Town of Pullman.
Yeah, he made the town of Pullman, laid it out, like modern day suburbia after the World War II, and all the houses looked the same, and everybody was the same, and then they could move a step up as they went up in the company.
Basically a company town.
Very much a company town.
Yeah, like from the old mining communities. That's correct. And he set up their own shopping center and everything, store, marketplace. Had their own medical facilities.
Is it true that they paid with some kind of company script or something? Or is that ever been served?
Yes, he did.
That was a very common practice, though.
Or was it?
In the coal mining, you got paid in company script. You shopped at the company store. In the case of Pullman, if you were a laborer, you lived in a dormitory similar to a barracks, and you stayed there until you made foreman, at which point you moved into better housing, but you could not work for Pullman and be married unless you were a foreman, because you and your family lived in company-provided housing.
What year was these be? Post-Civil War, correct? Or would this be?
Actually, it was during the 1860s while the Civil War was going on. He was doing it. His first official car that he made was for President Lincoln. They took a coach from the Chicago and Alton, and he beefed it up and it was finished when Lincoln got reelected for office, and they were getting ready to send it to Washington when the assassination happened. And the only time that President Lincoln used the car is when they moved his body from Washington to Springfield. And it took 2.5 weeks.
So how long was Pullman in operation out there?
Pullman was in operation until the passenger service lasted until 1963, when they disbanded Pullman cars and they sold the individual cars to the railroads and such. But they had a freight car business, and that lasted until the 80s.
That was an ugly, ugly strike.
Well, yeah, one of the major strikes, 1892, was about that. Either 1888 or 1892, but there was they'd had a major labor strike. What had happened was the orders fell off on the number of cars being built and sold. So what Pullman did was cut back on the amount of wages he paid. Cut back in wage pay. But what he didn't do was reduce the rents. So they were paying the same amount of rent, but they were making less money. It got so bad that they brought in federal troops, ended up coming in. And, which actually blew everything out of proportion. But it finally got settled.
Bloody? Was it very bloody? Or?
Yes.
Yeah.
And when Pullman died, he has probably got one of the most secure burial sites. Literally, when he was buried, to put his casket in, they started putting railroad ties, rails, cement. That whole pit is full, so that nobody could break in and steal his body.
That's true. He's buried up on the north side.
Graceland.
Mm-hmm.
They also did rapid transit cars at Pullman for a while too.
Right.
There used to be the old Wheelworks building at 105th and Maryland, 104th and Maryland. And back in the early 80s, I was a patrolman assigned to that district, and I took my lunch, and they were in the process of demolishing the buildings. So I took my lunch, and I just walked around in the buildings because they were open, and I looked up behind a conduit, and I saw cards that looked, like computer cards. I said, those don't look like they belong here. I reached up, and it was 3 cards stapled together, and they were actually the Pullman Porter cards for a car leaving Bakersfield, California, en route to Chicago. And it had the name of who was in each room and what time they wanted to be woken up, and if they shoes were to be polished and all the other stuff. So I took them over to the historic Pullman office and gave them to the lady there because they were just too good an item for me to stick in a drawer and forget about. And
Too good to be true, isn't it?
Well,
I'm not saying it's not true, but I mean, when you saw them.
I knew as soon as I saw them, I knew they were something of historic value.
Right.
I mean, minor historic value, but still definitely not something to be stuck in a desk drawer and forgotten about.
Sell them later at a garage sale.
Well,
Take the DuPage.
Talk about Pullman Town. The building at 112th and Champlain, I believe it is, what used to be the store and the community center, was the site of one of the Lincoln Douglas debates. At one time it was either a 2-story or a 3-story building. But I mean, other than the fact that it's in historic Pullman, it has historic value of its own. And then, then you got the Greenstone Church right there.
So that building predated Pullman even?
No, it was part of Pullman.
No, I mean it's before it was even a town? Or
no, it was part of the town of Pullman.
Okay.
It's just that structure, of and by itself, has historic importance. If you happen to be on the south side, there is a McDonald's at 115th and St. Lawrence Avenue, and because of its proximity to Pullman, all the decorations in the store have to do with Pullman. A Pullman Porter jacket, some of the China service, and they have a poster and it's a little bit bigger than a poster board, and it shows, I want to say, 9 or 10 different Pullman cars from the earliest all the way up through the stainless steel ones that they were making at the end.
Where's this again now?
115th Street and St. Lawrence Avenue.
Something
Yeah.
to remember, yeah.
It's a McDonald's. You're going to get McDonald's food, but the stuff they have in there, it's a themed McDonald's. And if you have any interest in trains and any interest in Pullman, there's enough there to keep you looking and reading for about 15 minutes. And there are a couple of books there. It's enough. They even have an HO scale, and I think it's English because it's marked 00 instead of HO. Pullman car.
Yeah, well, England actually still runs Pullman. England has a couple of passenger trains that are Pullman. One's the Manchester Pullman, and I forget the other one. Keeping it alive.
Now, when Pullman train cars were added to some line, were they like a separate entity, or you know what I'm saying? They didn't belong to that railroad, but they were
Leased
to them. Okay, but they automatically the Porter service started.
Well, yeah, the Porter, when they started doing the leasing with the cars and all, they hired the porters and everything. They hired their own crews to handle the cars.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's what I was wondering.
During World War II, during the early years of World War II, the porters were actually draft deferred for a while. Some of them were given 3 and 4 deferments to entry to duty because they were the Pullman cars and the Pullman service was considered so vital to the military service because when they would move a troop train out, they'd move monstrous numbers of people.
Interestingly, we all know Jack Benny, and we all know, most of us do anyway, historical, iconic comedian from vaudeville, radio, television, and he had an ongoing cast of characters, and among them, his valet Rochester, played by Eddie Anderson. Well, originally, the origin of that character was Jack was supposed to, whatever the radio script called for, he was supposed to run into Frank Nelson as a conductor. Frank Nelson, yes, that guy we always ran into everywhere. And he was unavailable. He was booked for another show. So Eddie Anderson was booked and they made him the character, a Pullman porter, Rochester Van Jones. So then they worked so well together, a few months down the line, they have a continuity, a script where Jack runs into Rochester in L.A. and says, how would you like to come work for me as my personal valet? And that's the origin of that. So just a little footnote to a sidebar to it.
The best, from my point of view, the best of the Jack Benny bits was Mel Blanc as the train announcer.
Train leaving on track 4 for Anaheim, Azusa, and Cucamonga. That one?
That's the one, but
yeah, that wasn't Mel, though.
You are no Mel Blanc.
Well, I'm no. Well, neither are you. How's that?
I don't attempt to pass myself off as such.
A Paul Frees, maybe.
Well, I'll tell you what. I just recently read an article in Classic Trains, and it's actually a reprint from an article on trains, where a guy, his name was Katz. He was a cartoonist and a rail fan, and he passed away at too early an age. But he wrote, could Jack Benny actually go to Azusa, Anaheim, and Cucamonga? Because all three cities were not on the same track. He'd get to two of them, but he'd have to take another train in the early morning hours to get to Anaheim.
Mm-hmm.
He could make, Anaheim was on the Surfline coast. Surfline, they called it, to San Diego. and the other two were on the run to go to San Bernardino.
Was it Villa or Rancho Cucamonga? They recently put up or maybe not recently now, but a memorial, a statue, all about that routine, I believe.
Yeah.
The original name of the town was Villa Rancho Cucamonga, and sometime in the last 20 or so years they shortened it to Rancho Cucamonga.
Anyway, before we get away from Pullman, I had two little points that I actually heard of. Believe it or not, gang, I have something to offer to add to the conversation. Number one, Pullman Tech High School, 200 East 111th, was later Mendel High School from 1952 to 88, Mendel Catholic High School, and it now was something about the land was declared had to be used to the educational purpose. So now I don't know the name of it. Southeast.
Gwendolyn Brooks
There you go.
College
Prep.
and it was a Catholic high school after Mendel.
Unity.
No, Unity. Unity is
wait.
the girls' school north to 79th Street. It was St. Martin de Porres, maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, yeah.
And now it's Gwendolyn Brooks.
You know,
Yeah.
Beautiful, large campus, well laid out. Had a lagoon there, probably still does.
Has the lagoon. What was the chapel has been reworked, and I think it's either a library or a gymnasium now.
The old gymnasium had been torn down. I know that. So
Big baseball fields in the baseball and football fields.
the Mendel was operated by the Augustinian order, of which they also still do St. Rita, of which I am a graduate. You're a Marist boy, right?
Yes.
I really went to Montefiore, but I don't usually tell anyone that.
How is Moses these days?
Yeah, he's okay. Yeah, he's the great lawgiver there.
That was my father's great threat. Behave yourself, or you're going to Montefiore. And in my later years, I drove down Western Avenue and saw Montefiore, and was so glad I didn't, because it would have taken me years to get there
Ashland.
on the bus.
Ashland.
Ashland, okay.
Ashland, yeah, good sight, man. Driving on Western. Western.
I'd go down Western, and I'd go into the 1,000-mile gaze going along the rail yard.
How many gays are around those rail yards anyway? Okay.
Gaze, G-A-Z-E.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You ought to be slapped upside the head with a rail tie.
Too many times. That's too many times. Okay, in interest of equal time and fair play, Doug Kenyuk, our stenographer here.
Howdy.
Where did you go to school? High school?
Went to Carl Schurz.
Where?
Schurz.
Schurz. Oh, Schurz. Carol Schurz.
Sure you did.
Okay, that's at let me
Milwaukee
see.
and Addison.
Yes, I was going to say Milwaukee. I used to pass it all the time.
Yeah, they took the iron fence down. So it no longer looks like a prison.
Yeah, that is funny. You should mention. Brian, out of town. Where'd you go to school?
High school, I went in Reading, Pennsylvania. Actually, a town outside called Rifton. It was Exeter High School.
Very good. Exeter.
Exeter.
Is that a public school? Or?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to get okay. Very good. John, where'd you go to school?
I went to St. Benedict's High School on Irving and Levitt.
Levitt. I love it.
And then I went to grammar school I first started at Bell School on 3800 block of North Oakley Avenue. And then I finished up at St. Andrew's Catholic School on Addison Street in Paulina.
Not far from Schurz.
Well, I wouldn't want to walk it from Schurz to St. Andrews.
Well,
But,
it's not a lot closer in a car.
but my wife, she went to Schurz High School because she lived right behind, about 2 blocks behind Schurz High School.
See? Anyhow, let's get back on the subject, gang. Anybody got anything else? You want to talk about Pullman some more? I understand. There's another one I understand. They would generally call the porter George.
Oh, yeah, let George do it.
Yeah. Right. From George Pullman, correct?
Yes.
That's where it came from. So I guess that's right. Let George do it, yeah. The origin of all these different sayings and terms, they all start somewhere.
Well, railroading added a lot to our lexicon.
Our words, too.
Yes.
Okay, well, so we
Well,
got
it's like highball.
highball.
Yeah.
Go.
Well, highball means, let's highball down the tracks. Though that came about because the early signal systems wasn't red and green lights. It was in the up in New England. If you wanted where a train crossed the tracks of another, you had a ball. If it was high up on it, that means your track was clear for you to go.
Okay.
And if it was down at the bottom, you ain't crossing.
Here, I always thought that came from baseball terminology. High ball, low ball.
No.
Make an offer. You say high ball, low ball, right? Is that from the same? No.
Yeah. Well, see.
Yeah.
You know, it's a variation thereof.
Very good.
English, fortunately, is a live language, and it continues to
Evolve.
and mutate. You know, talking about
Evolve.
just the side thing, Pullman and the war years and everything. If you stop at the, I think it's an American Legion post at 35th and Damon, on the north side of the street, they've got a 105 howitzer sitting out in the parking lot, not uncommon for the veteran organizations, and there is a plate stamped on the side of the howitzer that it was deactivated by Pullman in August of 45. So it was obviously something that was made for World War II and never got in service. But whenever you see one of these howitzers sitting out there, there'll always be a plate on it saying where it was rendered inactive. And Pullman got that job because obviously they were used to dealing with hot metal.
Oh, you mean for the war effort, the war?
I'm sure they built
yeah.
them during the war,
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
sure they deactivated them after the
Well,
war.
a lot of companies did that during World War II, were utilized
Yeah.
to make equipment for the military. I mean, Ford had the big aircraft facility up in Detroit that was basically underground.
Ford City also.
It was they made B-24s and B-17s. And they were doing like one a day. They were, the assembly line method.
They-
Lionel trains made binnacles for ships with the compasses and such.
Somebody, was it Revlon or someone, they were making casings for the ammunition instead of...
Baldwin Locomotive Works helped gear up Remington and Winchester in World War I and in World War II. And yes, they even Baldwin put out 14-inch naval railguns.
Singer sewing machine, Union switch and signal, 45s.
Alco, Lima, and Baldwin all made slides for 45s. Singer made the ASROC launcher, anti-submarine rocket and assisted torpedo and depth charge.
Okay.
Bausch and Lomb made the electricals.
Well, we had the industry, didn't we?
Yeah.
Thank God for small favors.
Oh, you better believe it. The more you read about, hear about, read about, see about, watch World War II. I mean, you hear about it when you're a kid, and the Allies were Britain, France, United States, and read the encyclopedia of all the nations that declared war there. I don't know how active some of their participation was, but we had the whole world was at war. Believe me, we had a few neutrals here and there: Switzerland, Sweden, who else? Massachusetts. Oh.
I caught the tail end of the movie MacArthur on Get TV last weekend, and in the movie it took almost 3 minutes for the representatives of all the Allied forces to sign the peace document on the Missouri.
On the aircraft carrier Missouri. As
battleship.
No, that's what Clinton said. The aircraft carrier Missouri. Remember that? I said that in Perpinus. Every kid who ever built models at least knows that. You know what a battleship is. Anyway, yeah, that was incredible. I wouldn't want to ever see it happen again, man.
Talking about trains in the real world.
Go.
The 20th Century Railroad Club has a trip coming up next month, and that is from Chicago to Grand Rapids and then by coach to Owasso, Michigan. And they will spend time at the Père Marquette Museum, which is the home base for the 1225, which is the heart and soul of the Polar Express.
Steam Locomotive Institute.
Okay, thank you, sir. And then in May, they're running a charter in conjunction with Amtrak down to Springfield for the Lincoln funeral. And we had someone on a few months ago talking about the Lincoln funeral train, and it's $399 per person double or $509 per person single from Chicago to Springfield. 2 nights. It says 2 nights in the Springfield Hilton plus sightseeing, and there will be a formal reenactment in period correct uniforms of the funeral train arriving and the casket and mourners coming down off the train. And if you need further information or would like further information, their email address is 20thcentury.org. That is 20century.org, and the phone number is 312-829-4500.
Very good.
And they just released their trip catalog. I got mine in the mail yesterday.
Yes, sir. Oh, time for a break, gang. Brian? Say something. Time for a break.
Stand by for our following announcement.
And you are listening to Chicago Junction on Jack FM 89.7, WRHS FM Norwich, and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Tuesday, February the 17th, the year 2015. And now, back to our panel and Chicago Junction.
Confirmed anything.
Hello, we're back. That was quick, wasn't it, folks? Hope you're still with us. Now, we have anything other news on others? Have we finished with Pullman, or is there Pullman and now we're just on the was a good tie-in with the Lincoln funeral train, and of course we've talked to Shannon Brown from the committee several times. As a matter of fact, folks, between our last meeting and this one, we voted her an honorary regular member. She's been here so often, at least on the phone. Okay, who's up? Oh, come on, Doug. What do you got to say here? What do you got to say,
I have
Doug?
something. There's an auction company down in, I believe it's in Kentucky, and they're auctioning off all kinds of railroad equipment. The thing that caught my eye was they're auctioning off an Elgin Joliet and Eastern passenger car. Now, it's $145,000 for this. The reason it's that much, it comes with 300 acres. It's on like one of these RV type deals. So they're selling it as a package, but they also hinted in the auction that you could buy the passenger car separately. It's called the Illinois. I believe it was built by Pullman for the president of the EJ&E to ride around in. So that car's up for auction right now.
How much?
$145,000.
That's pocket change for you, Red.
I was going to say take two.
Ozark?
Yeah, Ozark rail car.
Mountain rail car, okay.
Right.
All right. Anything else of interest like that?
Well, basically, it's a museum piece. I've read the brief on it, and I've seen the layout of it. It's a gorgeous car, but the thing is, it's on friction bearings and stuff, so it's going to cost you a lot to move it. But it is, if you have the room.
Where about in Kentucky did they say this was? Not that it matters to me personally.
The company auctioning this is Ozark Rail Car. So this is on some. It's not in Arkansas or Kentucky. It's someplace where.
Well, it could be anywhere.
Right.
Okay.
Because they're also auctioning off a Wabash NW1, the switcher, and I was reading that one, and that one was hilarious to read because it hasn't been moved in 10 years. It last ran 10 years ago. We're pretty sure it will start.
pretty sure. Them's powerful words.
They only want 10 grand for it.
What would you do with it?
Oh, God.
Yeah, put it in the backyard. I don't know.
For someone who has, the man who has
Fancy
everything.
bird feeder.
Well, the NW1 switcher has the distinctive front end on it. It's got a short bonnet, and it looks like it's got a steamer trunk on the nose, because it was a boot for the tools.
SW1.
I'm sorry, SW1.
That's what you were talking about, is an SW1.
All right.
Now, an NW. See, there is a difference between NW and SW. Well, one is a solid steel frame,
And the NW
and
is
the
welded.
is a welded steel frame, SW.
Okay.
We'll make a note of it.
Hey, read your spotter's guide.
Next up, who's up? You got some more?
I had something and I lost it. Well, Pullman and trains and collecting models and stuff. Lionel did make a silver 027 scale boxcar commemorating the millionth car produced by Pullman. I happen to have it, and if you're from Chicago, it's special. It's just like if you're from Chicago, you're lucky because there's so many trains that came in to Chicago. One year I ran a train and it had a B&O, it had a C&O GP9 pulling it, and then it was B&O, C&O, Chicago Northwestern, EJ&E, all the different train cars that you would see moving on track in Chicago. We're spoiled because there used to be so much moving through. I can remember seeing Penn Central, or cars with Penn Central markings, crossing 127th Street about Parnell. Just so much stuff to catch the eye, and I was out by the Kensington yard for Metra, and they had a bunch of the older passenger cars, and I had a chance to talk to the guy that was there. 4 of them are going to the Illinois Railway Museum. 6 of them are going down to Texas to a museum down there. And then yesterday I was on 47th Street, and here's a string of about 10 of them up on the High Line, and the pantographs are gone. So my guess is that they took the pantographs off to either salvage them separately or put them back, refurbish them and put them back in supply for replacement if something gets damaged or destroyed.
What's a pantograph?
The pantograph is the expandable arm that comes up with the bar across it to take power from the overhead line.
Okay. All right. For benefit of those who don't know.
It's how the real electric trains run.
Really? On electricity?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Considerable electricity.
Or on coal?
No.
Yeah.
No. If it's got a, I don't know. Brian might be able to tell me. Was there an engine designed to use the pantograph and have its own internal source of electricity?
Yes, they made it 3-power. They had one that was battery operated, had an oil diesel in it, and it had electrical pantograph to run, and also run on third rail.
Yeah, FL9s.
Wow.
Out in wasn't on the Long Island line?
No, I'm talking about in the beginning of the diesel, the early box cabs.
Right, the box
They
cabs.
made it, and it was battery operated. It had its small diesel in it, and it took power from a pantograph.
So you could run it anywhere.
Yeah.
The North Shore ones were battery powered, so when they were off the overhead wire, they could go down their spurs running on battery. Their electric locomotives. So that was a dual one too.
Yeah. Well, I remember talking to a guy out at IRM, and they've got a GG1 out there, and they said they tried to fire it up, and they dropped the whole grid.
See, that was the one thing. With the Little Joe, they reworked the electrical panels inside before they sent them to the South Shore. So this way they could run off the 600-volt system. The GG1 electrics worked off to 11,000 volts AC.
Oof.
No, they were not made to run off of 600 volts.
Obviously.
And they have, and what it was, each axle had twin motors. So you had 2 motors per axle. So with your 6 axles, you had 12 motors instead of single motor.
Yeah, you could really slide down the rail.
Oh yeah, trust me. The GG1 was definitely ranks as one of the finest electric locomotives made. Regular output of almost 4,700 horsepower.
Wow.
For starting purposes, you go up to 8,900 horses. Then it shifts to second gear. Everything evens out good.
Well, when you're saying starting, you're talking about starting from a dead stop.
Yeah.
So they have to have all that power to overcome the inertia of all the dead
Well, what it
weight.
is, the added horsepower, and then once they get going, then they shift into the regular mode, free run mode, and then which is 4,700 horsepower. That's all they needed, and they usually ran up to 100 miles an hour. On 39-foot jointed rail.
The GG1 is just, personally, I don't think it's as pretty as the 611 J class, but it's still a beautiful engine.
It's timeless. One of the unique things about it, when Mr. Lowy, Raymond Lowy, the industrial designer, he finishes designs is what he does. He did not do the exact design for it, but he's given ideas to what to work with to finish it off. Like the Coke bottle. The Coke bottle already had the swirls. He just made better swirls in it, and whereas Coke bottle became iconic. And the same with the GG1. It was actually an industrial designer in Westinghouse that designed the casing for the original GG1, and what he did, he just made it look better. And that's when he came up with the welding, doing what the automotives did, and weld the body on instead of riveting it on. Because there's only one rivets. And she's number 4,800, and she still exists.
The GG1 body is, and please, because I'm asking from a position of ignorance, is the GG1 considered one of the Art Deco engines?
Yes, made 1934.
I mean, there were some really beautiful engines built around that time. The Chesapeake and Ohio 400, the New York Central Dreyfuses.
Oh yeah, I mean, the streamline era was the 30s. I mean, one of the reasons why they did the streamlining, to bring the people's spirits up. Yes, the Zephyr created quite a stir with the small diesel-powered steam, but you could do a steam locomotive that made the same power and streamline it, and then you had the same basic thing. And that, of course, was like the Hiawatha. The Hiawatha started off with basically a medium-sized passenger engine, the Atlantic 442 wheel arrangement, having 4 driving wheels, and 4-wheel leading truck, and then streamlining it though, and it made people happy, and it gives the illusion of speed.
Aesthetics.
Yes.
Now, that's a good question. Streamliner, is that necessarily a diesel or no?
No.
Okay.
Well, the steam locomotive, like you was talking to Henry Dreyfuss, he took on the design and took probably one of the most perfect engines mechanically proportioned, the New York Central Hudson. A well-proportioned engine, beautiful. And he added the aesthetics to it and put a streamlined casing over it, starting it from an upside-down bathtub to looking like a Centurion. And that, the grace and beauty, it just captured the people's imagination.
In this period, you saw a lot of stainless steel.
Yes, stainless steel started coming in. Bud was the Bud company is the one who perfected, came up with the spot welding with stainless steel. And that's why they were the forerunners of stainless steel construction in passenger cars. That's why a lot of their cars that were made even back then are still running around today.
So that's interesting. What you're saying is that it was to bring people's spirits up in the Depression?
Yeah.
Some brighter future, without even saying it, but you just apply it by the very sight.
Yeah, that's it, the bright future. In fact, it's funny because one of the latest of the stainless steel trains that New York Central operated, after they did the 20th Century Limited, they did the Empire State Express. And all stainless steel, first class accommodations. And the day that they launched it on the radio was 3 hours before the word came about Pearl Harbor. On December 7th, 1941 is when they launched the train, and it got lost.
Oh, man. Just the same way in our town here, Marshall Field started the Chicago Sun newspaper, now the Sun-Times after they merged later. This was supposed to be the Democratic counterbalance to the Republican Tribune. However, they launched the paper the first week of December, 41. The 7th comes, we all got to be united, correct? So, I mean, it was like a matter of timing. But we used to find these, like we go to Maxwell Street years ago, my brothers and myself got a couple of papers, Roosevelt dead, Germany quits, that sort of thing, and interesting to see everything else that's in the paper at the time. Just a little bit of history right there. But we digress.
Yes.
What's next?
I like to talk about that little suburb north of us called Milwaukee. Apparently they're putting in a streetcar system.
They are.
And what do we know about that?
Pollution.
I don't know much about it. I just heard recently that they were planning on it.
Yeah, it looks like it's going forward. And Kenosha's up there, they're extending their streetcar system too.
All the way to Milwaukee?
Well, not yet.
Not yet. No. Could be.
Right now it just runs as a loop from the metro station to the waterfront where, coincidentally, all this new housing was built.
Yeah, well, that's a nice area, too.
Which came first, the chicken or the eggs?
Milk.
It'll probably get a lot of use with the festivals down on the lakefront and Irish Fest and all that other stuff, too.
Well, it is becoming real popular. And it goes right by the train station. And they're actually doing Union Pacific's doing serious talk, but the governor of Wisconsin at this time still being wishy-washy. He don't like trains, but they want to extend the rapid transit from Kenosha to Milwaukee Station, and use the Northwestern line to go all the way in again.
That guy up there in Wisconsin's interesting. He hates passenger trains, but boy, he loves freight trains because the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, every time a railroad wants to abandon something, they snap it up right away and rail bank it. And then they reopen it and either lease it back to the Wisconsin and Southern or some other small operator.
Yeah.
If you happen to catch the CBS morning news this morning, they were talking about the lamentable condition that Boston finds itself in with all the snow. And here in front of one of Boston's streetcars is a little short, like a 10-foot rail car with a plow blade on it and a squatty looking box, and the box is nothing but weight to keep the blade down. But here's this streetcar, you know, tan over light green, a similar paint scheme to what used to be in Chicago back in the 40s, and then plowing through the snow, and then towards the end of last week on Channel 7, they had a 45-second clip of a Chicago or a Canadian National train coming down the track, and it's going through a stand of trees on either side, and it's not kicking up a lot of snow, but as it gets close to the grade crossing, you can start seeing the snow flying up as it starts pushing into grade crossing. Up comes a wave of snow, completely clouds the lens of the camera, but you can hear every car as it's clearing the grade crossing. All you hear is the...
Well, the reason why is because they kept clearing the road, and there weren't that many trains running, so it kept piling it up high. So that's why it always looks really spectacular, going across a grade crossing.
Well, I think the engineer enjoys blowing through the snowstack, too, as long as he doesn't get a derail.
Yeah, that's the only thing that hurts.
You can speak from experience, having been an engineer, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, that is true. Yeah, I admit it, yeah. I see a pile of snow.
Yeah.
I'm going to Butler. I'm on track speed.
There's a little boy inside of all of us.
Yes, there is.
The author, David Balducci, pretty prolific author, wrote a book called The Christmas Train. And I was listening to it on Books on Radio before SiriusXM discontinued it. But a train was heading towards the West Coast, and there was, they knew there was a bad snowstorm, so the engineer pulls the train up into a snow shed, and then they move all the people as far forward as they can, so they only have to heat the cars that they need to. But the reason the engineer pulled up into the snow shed is he knew he wasn't going to plow through the snow where it had come down off the side of the mountain without getting stuck.
Could that derail the train of snow?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's like actually in the winter, some of the derailments on lightly used lines at grade crossings are because there's ice. And the ice gets packed down so much, the train will actually ride out of it and ride down the street.
Oh.
If you watched the show Railroad Alaska, that's exactly what happened. They were pulling cars off the barge, and ice had gotten on the thing, and the idler car, the flat car between the locomotives and the barge, went right off the tracks. And they had to stop and figure out how to pull it back onto the tracks.
The snow can build up in the mountains so deep and so heavy that I've seen photographs of the old plow trains where they've got like a 12-foot blade that swings out with a hydraulic ram, and I've seen it bent like a spaghetti strand.
Oh.
It's just unbelievable.
I got a good program that you should watch. 90 what was it? I think it was 92, 93. They did a program on doing snowplows over Donner Pass. And they were going up, and they were using the flanger first. And Jordan spreaders is what you're talking about with the wings. And they were going up, and all of a sudden, the rail overturned. And they actually had to they got the car back on, but they had to go out and redo the rail. And the only way they could do it is they strung rope, the length of it, soaked in kerosene, set it on fire, so this way the rail will stretch, heat and expand. That way they could spike it back in and clamp it in and continue on their journey. And they ended up breaking out the big rotary snowplow. But they even had bulldozers up on the hillsides.
I can believe that.
And all the bulldozers got refilled from one of the locomotives.
I remember that show. Wasn't it they were following the people who lived there?
Yeah.
Because they live in that area, and then they get the call to go out and clear the track. Remember that show? I
Yeah.
don't remember the name of it, but I remember that show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was like something like about unusual jobs or something along those lines.
You mentioned Donner Pass. There was just something on the radio yesterday or Monday that a group expedition up in the mountains in South America found the airplane that had crashed with the Chilean national
Like in
soccer
1965
team.
or something?
1980.
80, okay, a long time ago.
And
I saw that too in the pop-up news over in
Isn't
Yahoo.
that's a little bit south of Donner Pass.
yeah, but similar. Donner Pass is only famous because of the wagon train getting snowed in and them
Cannibalism?
having to resort to cannibalism,
Yeah.
which is the same thing that happened with the Chilean soccer team.
Oh. No, that,
And they made a terrible movie out of it.
Well, the snow. If you want to see kind of a good movie, is Murder on the Orient Express, because that's what happened. The train ran into a snowbank and couldn't go any further, and they had to wait for the plow to come and rescue them. So in the interim, somebody gets murdered on the train, and that's what the whole plot of the...
Yeah, and then Perot gets to...
Yeah. But initially it gets stuck in the snowbank.
But, in fact, they did a shorter film. SP did it, because it was the one time that the passenger train actually got stuck up in the mountain because of the snowfall. They had a record snowfall of like 187 inches of snow.
Yow.
Yeah, the like some of the crewmen live up there, and they have nice 2-story houses. Well, when you have to walk out of your attic to get outside,
187 inches, like 15 and a half feet.
and then some blowing, and they literally dig tunnels so they can get from one place to another. But yeah, it's really nice. But it had actual footage of the passenger train that got stuck. It was the city of San Francisco that got stuck up there by the SP.
My wife gave me a book for Christmas called Rail Dining, and I'm having great fun reading it because there's only about 50 pages of story. The rest of it is recipes from all the signature dishes from all the rail lines.
James Porterfield.
It probably is, yeah. It's a paperback. It's paperback reprint. It's about almost 2 inches thick.
like what do they call it, a trade paperback?
Yeah, it is. It's a trade paperback. It's
I
a
have the
large size.
hardcover versions, and they have some great recipes in there. The one, his first book, he has recipes from all the different railroads. And he takes the most famous of each one. And Santa Fe is twice. If you go to Santa Fe, but then you also go to
All the way. Sorry.
to Fred Harvey.
Oh, really?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
They had a chapter just on the commissary, which I found fascinating.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, how much his book has with Henry Kaiser's book Zephyr, talking about commissary operations.
Yeah, and you sit there and like when you talk about the galleys aboard ship, or actually, the galleys on board train were based on the galleys aboard submarines. Compact space, in about the same amount of space.
Well, it would definitely have to be an economy of space in a submarine. I know John Wayne ran down the hallways of those, like they're showing some movies, right?
Yeah, he did. You don't see too many submariners over 6 foot tall.
I run into a guy in the local gin mill, like watering hole. I go in every once in a while and talk to him. You know, it's as usual. You wind up knowing a lot of people together or something. He was a submariner in during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and they didn't know if the U.S. had been nuked or not. They were going up the Baltic, so just interesting. Anyway, before we go, I got a couple items. Believe it or not, I got a recent email. They already have the schedule out for a day out with Thomas this year. Those of you who are interested in Thomas the Tank Engine, I believe April is sometime for this. Be early this year out at the Illinois Railway Museum. He'll be earlier this year. And the other item was I can't remember. If you say something, maybe I'll remember it. Come on, guys.
Okay, something.
Marshmallow.
Marshmallow.
Trains.
Marshmallow. There was a plant called a mallow, which grew in the marsh. The original marshmallows were from this marsh plant, not from sugary stuff. That song, that theme in Quiet Man, dum 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 dum. That's the Rakes of Mallow was the name of that. Anyway, we're getting just about there. We got about a couple seconds left. Anybody got anything else? What was my? Gee, what? Oh Lord, it's a pain to get old, but consider the alternative.
Well, hopefully, at least a couple of our listeners. We have what 5 listeners total?
If you count, if you count the Siamese twins over in Kenosha.
Okay. Hopefully, they made it out to Morton Arboretum.
Oh,
Again, to see the Rails Enchantment that's still going on.
Mm-hmm. Monthly Great Midwest Railroad Show is was it just passed? It was last Sunday.
Yeah, just passed last Sunday.
The next one will be the 8th of March.
That is correct.
So I do know that part. And in as much as we're winding up very closely, I think it's about time to say happy rails to you. And I'm going to throw it right back to Brian. Mr. Brian. If you will.
Well, Mr. Bryan would be happy to talk if Mr. DeVita will start giving me my intro for closing.
Wake up, John. One and a two. Lawrence Welk actually had a license plate A1, A, and A2 in California. Do you know that? No, A1, A, and A2.
A one and a two.
Yeah. Thank you, boys.
He was the only big band leader that successfully transitioned to television.
All aboard!
He wasn't born in Europe. He was on a farm in one of the Dakotas, and he kept that accent to the family.
Next stop, Chicago Junction.
Join us again next time when we take our railroads of the imagination, our continuing journey throughout the wonderful world of trains. Chicago Junction is a production of the Windy City Hometown Radio Network and can be heard over this station as well as at windycityhometown.com, where recordings of all our shows may be heard. Once again, all aboard. And for all you listeners out there, if you have any subject on railroading that you'd like to hear us talk about, try and drop us a line, either on the computer or on our Facebook page. This is your announcer, Brian Valou, saying thank you for listening. Oh yes, the conductor was portrayed by Charlie Johnson, a struggling young actor in need of work. Thank you and good night.
You have been listening to Chicago Junction on Jack FM 89.7, WRHS FM Norge, and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Tuesday, February the 17th, the year 2015. Chicago Junction was produced by Jack Ryan, directed by John DeVita, and our audio engineer is James Rohde. Radio station manager for WRHS-FM is Mr. Kevin Zeflik, and the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network is John Shikanda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Wednesday, February the 11th. Until next time, be safe, and thanks for listening. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norridge, Illinois.